This is CPAs and Beignets, where numbers tell stories. We're serving up real conversations with CPAs about who they are, how they got here, and what lights them up out of the office. Historic day. Welcome, everybody, to the CPAs and Beignets podcast, where numbers tell stories. We're very excited to launch this new venture. My co-host, Ann Lupo. I'm Ron Gitz with the State Society of CPAs. And how exciting that we're finally here. A couple of words on...
Amazing. I love it.
And so excited to have as our first guest, Secretary of the Department of Revenue, Richard Nelson.
Thanks for having me.
Who we've known for a bunch of years, first in the state legislature and now in your new role, and a lot of work together. We're here to do some unusual questions, so beyond what you do as Secretary. And let's start with the theme, CPAs and Beignets. Are you a covered up in sugar, or are you a dusting guy?
I prefer the dust. I can't eat all the sugar. You know, you always breathe it in and choke on it. You know, my kids love it, and they'll, take it all down. But
I get it, and I've created the biggest faux pas, and you too. We're all in dark clothing.
Yes.
It's a no-no when you're talking beignets.
I expect to have a little bit of dusting. I'm a pile-it-on kind of person.
Yeah.
So.
You wear more than you eat.
That's it.
Unusual facts, and we're talking about numbers telling stories. Mm-hmm. Here's a number. I know you know this number well. There are about 240,000 people a year that get struck by lightning. Do you know anything about that and how that pertains to you specifically?
I would say that what year was it? Maybe 2013. I was part of that 240,000, I guess.
Wow.
So I got struck by lightning in Switzerland. You might have heard this story before. But
I thought Switzerland was neutral. Was that positive charge? God snuck in?
Apparently there's mountains, and apparently, lightning does strike there. No, but there's this town called Locarno, Switzerland, that's on the border kind of with Italy. If you've ever seen the James Bond movie GoldenEye, that's where the opening scene of that movie where he bungee jumps off a dam.
Yes. Yeah.
And so my brother was visiting me because we were living in Germany, and he's like, "Hey, let's go jump off this dam, the GoldenEye dam. It's like 800 feet or something nuts." And so we go there, we actually bungee jump off the dam, and then later that day we're walking along. There's actually a lake in the town. We're walking along the lake and got struck by lightning. So both of us, yeah.
Oh, wow.
We both woke up, we both got knocked out, and my brother woke up, and he's like, "Why is Richard laying on the ground?" And then I woke up, and I was like, "What happened? Why are we laying here?" And so we kind of bounced up, and he touched his head, and he says, "I smell burning hair." And he goes like this. He's like, "It's me." And I was like, "Dave, I think we got struck by lightning," and we ran away. But it was fun. I mean, I know long-term, no superpowers or anything,
Did you get
unfortunately.
checked out medically? I mean, how's that work? You just...
it kind of hurt. It hurt a little bit, but no permanent damage or anything. I think I joke if I can't remember people's names now. I feel like I got struck by lightning. Yeah, I used to be really sharp, and I'm sorry. You get the the downgraded version of me now because I got struck by lightning. But
so a very risk-averse day for you.
Yeah, that's right.
No more bungee jumping or.
Oh no, I do all kinds of stuff. But you ever see The Return of Jafar, the second Aladdin movie? It's like the tagline was, "You'd be surprised what you can live through."
So there you go.
That's kind of it.
Oh, for sure. Amazing. To survive it and just kind of walk away is really a cool story. I guess there's no video of that.
No. It's funny because my brother and I were joking, they would just found 2 dead American kids just sitting. I mean, I guess I imagine it can kill you. So I mean, they would just found you just dead on the side of the lake and been like, I don't know what happened to them. Eventually they would have gone and checked your hotel room and been like, oh, I guess this is who these guys are. But
oh, great!
God sent me back for tax reform, Ron. That's
Here we go.
You know what? We're glad you're here and you were able to guide us through all of that.
That's right.
And your time in the legislature. I know you've got a really interesting past and a hell of a resume regarding your background and your education and world travels at an early age. And what brought you back to Louisiana? I mean, I know your background is got an engineering degree and a law degree, and off you go with the State Department. Not Atlanta, Georgia, but Georgia, right? The country.
Yeah, the Republic. The former Soviet Republic. That's true.
And but what brought you back here? Specifically to the great state of Louisiana.
So my oldest son, my first son, was born when we were in Georgia. He was born in New Orleans, but spent the first 2 years of his life in Georgia. My second son was born in Washington, D.C. when we were with the State Department still. And so we were actually supposed to move to Nairobi, Kenya. And, I told my wife, I was like, look, I feel like the kids would be better off growing up somewhere, as opposed to having to bounce around all over the place. I mean, there's a lot of benefits. It's a pretty cool job. You go all over the world, you see a lot of stuff, but at the same time, you miss a lot of things too. And so, we decided that would be better for the kids to come back here. And so I said, if we were able to find a job, I was actually able to find a pretty good position back here in Mandeville and moved back. So it was funny because it was about a month from moving to Nairobi that kind of everything came together that we can move back home to Mandeville. And so we had to tell the State Department to rip all the Nairobi stickers off our luggage and put on Mandeville, and we came back home. And part of it was that I've always read the news. I've always followed kind of what's going on in Louisiana. Like even if I'm on the other side of the world, I'd read the Advocate or the Times-Picayune or whatever and see. And you're always like, Louisiana's losing people. Louisiana's last in all these lists and all this stuff. And it's just kind of a tragedy to me that was the case. Most of my friends from undergrad or from high school, even like a lot of them have left. They're in Texas or Florida, wherever else. And I just felt like somebody needs to do something about it. And if I had the opportunity to come back, I would. And so I got that chance, and then ran for the legislature, which was kind of another lightning strike situation. Like I was like a pretty crowded, like 5 people ran in my race. Like it was I was essentially a nobody, and was able to pull that off. And then from there, been able to do a lot of good stuff, I feel like. And, I think the state is in a much better position today. I mean, not just through my efforts, but I've spent a lot of time, effort, and energy in trying to make it better. And worked with a lot of, great colleagues in the legislature, worked with the governor and everything else. And I would tell you, I think that the state now is on a much different track than it was a couple years ago. I mean, it's just night and day, I would say, from where I was on a couple levels, not just the tax thing, but, education and crime, all these things I think are going in a much better direction.
For sure. And we hear a lot about moving at the speed of business, not the speed of government. I think we've done that. Certainly pretty compressed session last year. Tax reform was supposed to be 2 weeks. I think they gavelled out a couple of days early. And I think your word, numbers telling stories, right. 90% of the agenda got accomplished. Is that still pretty
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, obviously the Amendment 2 that was on the ballot didn't pass, and practically that was mostly not really related to tax. It was mostly spending reforms and changes and stuff, which I think all would have been good. And I think we're taking kind of a swing at a lot of that stuff again. But most of the substantive changes that needed to happen, we did in November. And now they're the law, they're already in effect. So, these are things that have been recommended for, years. As long as most of us have been alive, most of us have been alive or thinking about it at least. So, it's, like I said, it's night and day. And I think you can see that too in, just kind of the announcements, not just the mood. I think the mood and the, when you go to talk at conferences, when you go to talk to businesses, it's not like, oh, Louisiana, where maybe you all are good at football. Like now Louisiana's like, wow,
Right.
What happened? Like, how did this change happen so quickly? And now we're really coming ahead. But, you've had $60 billion of projects or so, big investments announced in the last 6 months, maybe.
Oh, yeah. It's been,
just since tax reform ended,
Right.
November 30th, the end of November. And since then, it's been billions and billions. It's like almost every week we're announcing some other $1 billion investment or something. But I think that speaks to the effectiveness of the changes. And like I said, they've been recommended for a very long time. So it's not like it was any of our bright ideas. It's just been waiting for so long. And that's, I think, evidence of Louisiana's potential that's always been there. We just haven't done anything about it.
Yeah, just having watched it through the years and actually been part of all the study groups, seems to be a St. Tammany thing, because I know State Rep John Schroeder created a study commission, and then you followed up with yours, just looking at all the things we needed to do. I don't know, when you ran for governor, I saw you speak several times and kind of figured out all of it, right? It's a very complex system dating way back 100 plus years, but so much of it needed to be done at one time. And it's crazy that we accomplished that in 10 days. Things like franchise tax just totally going away.
Yeah.
So I think your story is really compelling in the follow through and your sort of command of it. Your youth certainly doesn't hurt, and your energy and the way you invigorate the crowd. So that's certainly helpful. I think that carries through in the results. And so, where do we go from here? I mean, what's next? I know there's some cleanup happening to some of the legislation in the current session, which is kind of a weird fiscal session. There's not a whole lot of tax changes.
There's not a lot of fiscal stuff.
We did them all.
That's the good thing
November.
about, fixing it last fall. I mean, it's funny because this session would have been the absolute most miserable thing in the world had we not had that special session last year, because we were staring down the barrel of about a $750 million shortfall this year. And it would have got even worse next year, that was for the next budget, the 26 budget. And it would have got even worse as you go down the pipe. And so we were able to fix a lot of those problems, so we didn't have to, try to build the airplane while we're flying it, right? And so, it's just kind of funny because this is supposed to be the big fiscal session. We already kind of fixed honestly, most of the problems has been fixed to the extent they needed to be. I mean, there's definitely still progress that needs to be made. I think, our corporate rate is probably still a little bit high than it needed to be. I think our personal income tax rate, I think we can continue to reduce it over the next couple of years. Hopefully get down to zero. Like I know I've talked about that forever. The governor's talked about that forever. I think that's the way that you make Louisiana more competitive. But we've worked on making a lot of, I think, small positive changes too. I mean, the rates and all those big changes, I think, get all the headlines from the special session last year. But we also fixed, 10,000 other little controversies that have kind of plagued us forever. Yeah. So we cleaned a lot of that up too. So I think we're going to continue to work on some of those things and, try and catch those few fish that got away. Yeah. I think the inventory tax is one thing that's pending right now. That's a really uncompetitive way of raising money. We have another amendment to kind of take another bite at the apple on that Amendment 2, that section of Amendment 2, that getting rid of the inventory tax. So I think that will make, if you put Louisiana in a position where most of the parishes could opt out of the inventory tax, we would have pretty much the most competitive tax code in the country. Yeah. In that, whatever parish that opts out of it, you'd have pretty much the most competitive tax code in the country. So, even that 3% income tax is funny. I went and picked up Chinese takeout the other day, and I saw there was a sign, and it was like, 3.5% credit card fee for using a credit card, right?
They all have it now.
I took a picture of it and I sent it to the governor. I said, listen, our income tax is less, the income tax rate is less than the credit card fee. And I was like, at that point, it doesn't really impact, I feel like it doesn't really impact that, your decisions and investment and stuff.
There's a number telling a story.
There
right?
we go.
There you go.
That's right.
So legislation aside, the administrative part of what you do, and I know there's been a lot of changes in the building and a lot of really positive changes. I've heard compliments about the department that I've not heard from our members in the past, which has really got my attention.
Nice.
Like what is going on? And I know one thing that you've done, we had you in our magazine in Lanyap when you first took on the role. And you mentioned in there that you turned off all social media, which is interesting because I think you're a millennial. I think that's fair to say. You're in that age group, which is the other group that's driven by technology because they've had it most of their lives. And so talk a little bit about that decision and how it's impacted you.
You mean? Oh, for me, how I stopped really interacting.
Right.
Yeah. I've been in politics, or I've been, actively campaigning or in the legislature and all that stuff for so long. That stuff just kind of consumes your life, it really does. And, at the end of the day, I don't think there's that much value, in my mind. There's not a lot that comes out of it, at least from a personal level. I think it just kind of distracts you from, your kids and your life and everything else. So I just kind of shut down. I got deleted all social media stuff from my phone. I don't do it at all. Every now, I probably make 3 or 4 posts a year or something like that now when it's something that's pretty important. But honestly, I think it's, even as a millennial, obviously I'm a little bit younger than some of the folks in the government or whatever. But I think it doesn't really add very much to people's lives, and I think you can see that across the board. And I think it's just. It's designed to get you engaged and suck all your time from you, and it doesn't
hear opinions of people that you don't even really know, and it doesn't really matter. Right?
I mean, it doesn't. I mean, I don't know. I've never met anybody that's like, this thing makes me so much happier, right? And so, me, I feel the same way, and I knew that just from being in politics, it had been so consuming that. You follow this news cycle all the time. I read The Advocate in the morning, and Wall Street Journal, and that's about all I need. I don't need to. Be tuned into every Twitter post or anything all day long.
So good news, right? I mean, actual news that's been vetted and
I mean, I'm nothing against it. I understand. I just think that kind of we would take some time to smell the roses. I think and we'd be better off.
Yeah, you're still very akin to technology and its impact because I know there's a new website at LDR.
Great.
When in our
nice.
One of our meetings, I heard you use the word chatbot, which I think is interesting.
We do.
So
we do.
and which is really what we decided you're going to be our first guest on our podcast. It was the chatbot quote that really got me. Can you talk a little bit about the website and what's available?
Sure. So it's funny, yeah. So when I first came on, the very first thing the legislators told me was like, listen, like I get complaints every day about how terrible your website is, and like I'd gone to the website maybe once or twice, but. So I started kind of looking at it, and I've built websites. Like I built the websites for my campaign and, a couple different things. And so I was like, look, let me go to dive into this. And it really became one of those things that it looks like maybe like a SharePoint site, like where an internal organization would dump a bunch of information that only they could find. Yeah. That was pretty much how the website was structured.
Fair.
And like, it was never, I mean, I even raised the point of like, has anybody ever tried to look at this from like a taxpayer, like user perspective? And they're like, nah, we never really looked at it that way. Like, we just looked at it from like an internal department. Like, we're required to put this information out. We put it on the website. And I was like, well, you should look at this the same way Amazon or the same way any business would look at a website. Like, you want it to be easy. Whatever people do, that the most common activities like should be the most prominent ones. You shouldn't have, I think when they built the website, they got paid by how many clicks it took to find what you were looking for. Like, there was like multiple pages that you had to click through when there's no other option. It's just like a daisy chain of things you had to go through. And I was like, this is absurd. And so initially when we started, I said, let's make some changes. And then I got a lot of pushback of like, well, the backbone of the website was so old that we can't do these changes except in like a 6-month time frame to like change a phone number that was wrong. And I was like, this is unacceptable. We got to get a new website. And so we basically threw it out. We made a few changes to kind of triage the problem. And then we threw a lot of it out and built a whole new website from the backbone that's now much easier to update, much easier to administer. And then I think there's a lot more intelligent features to try and get people the information they need in the fewest clicks. But one of the things that we changed was that we put a chat bot, which functionality we always had based on our tax software. It's run by, Fast, who does our kind of integrated tax software. And so they actually built it for South Carolina. And all we had to do was basically update the questions to provide to it. Yeah. And it's pretty good. I mean, it's definitely not perfect. We're also looking into using our call center provider, like running like a Microsoft driven, like kind of another kind of chatbot customer service thing that can answer a lot of your questions that might be even more intelligent in the next couple months. So we're looking at those options too. I mean, just trying to get people the information they need. I mean, honestly, my goal would be you have to interact with the Department of Revenue as little as possible and as easily as possible, right? And so everything we can do to make that better. Nobody likes paying taxes, but it should at least not be unnecessarily painful, right? The process should not be painful.
Sure. And I know one of the obvious things, seems obvious enough since we're having this conversation in this context, but the easiest thing a taxpayer should be able to do is pay the Department of Revenue. I know you talked about that.
Just put a pay button.
Bouncing red button at the top. Like, pay us.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, that's not something you should bury behind 15 menu screens with like 20 different options that people don't understand. And so I think there's still some work to do, but we've tried to make it so that you can do it outside of LATAP. You don't have to create a login. You don't have to have that information. You could just, you get a letter, you can go in there and put it in. You can make estimated payments outside of logging in now. We actually reduced we negotiated down the credit card fees because we had our previous credit card vendor. They're like, we're not in business anymore. We don't do this government stuff. And so we said, well, we got some different options for them, and they all came back the same price, like the same charge to the taxpayer. I mean, the department's not paying it; it's on the taxpayer. And I asked them, and I was like, "What are the odds that they all came back at the exact same price of everything?" And I was like, "Go to all of them and tell them give us a better deal." And the one that gave us the lowest amount, so we actually reduced the credit card fees that were previously in place, because I was just like, "Go find the one that gives us the best deal." And like, it's not for us; it's for the taxpayers. But why not? So it's just one of those things that just nobody thought about before.
Nobody thought about it.
Yeah, they're like, well, the taxpayers pay it. Who cares?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't come out of my budget.
Whatever.
Right. Well, what about the tax professional? I mean, what do you see the advantages of the website redesign for the tax professional?
Yeah, so we tried to structure it so that you can find, there's a few things that people use it for, right? Like you're trying to find ribs, or you're trying to find some of the policy changes, or, the new collections numbers, that kind of thing. And so we're trying to make it easier to find those things. But we're also trying to do is we had essentially a maze of phone numbers and contacts and emails and all that stuff. And so we tried to slim that down. So we took off, 1,000, I would say dead email addresses that were still on the website that you could email and hope your question would one day be answered, and it just wasn't coming. But so we tried to slim a lot of those down, try and streamline the phone numbers so that they're, deliberate, and try to collect all that information in a single place. And I think that the contact us, I was like, the two things I care about are the most important things are, one, being able to pay, and two, contact us. Those should not be difficult and hard for anybody to understand. Right? Yeah. And so I think we've streamlined those. I mean, I still, when I have time, not during the session, I go through the website and I come up with a list of 10 new changes and I send it to them. But I think it's a labor of love to just try and make it as user-friendly as possible, and, happy to take any feedback about. I know we had one of the liaison meetings, and somebody said, how come you can't make estimated payments outside of LATAP? I feel like that would be so much easier. And I'm like, how can we go? How have we gone years without doing
not
that?
done
Like
that.
that's ridiculous.
It seems
And so,
obvious. It
Yeah,
just
we
seems
did
obvious.
it. It took like 2 weeks, I think. 2 weeks we had it up.
So the answer always was it takes 6 months to change a phone number on the, if you have to create a net new process, that's what, a year and a half? I mean, I don't know. It always just sort of died there. So
Yeah.
Because I think some of our members were used to the long list of mailboxes that they needed to respond to. I had a member just the other day at the office say, like I have an issue with my client and I need some help. Where do I start? And we try to point them to the website, at least as the first point of contact.
for sure.
And we had to do, we use the website to put a lot of the clarifications about some of the tax reform changes because we essentially, we did rewrite like the income tax code, the sales tax code, and all whatever we had before isn't really useful that much.
And made it effective, like, I don't know.
Like a week later. Yeah, no. So we did have a lot of information on there. I think that was pretty useful. That was something that I think lots of people use as a resource. It would be funny because I'd be talking to people and they'd like quote this thing, and they're like, "Oh, we got this from the website." And I was like, "Oh, that is right.
That
I'm
is
glad
true.
you have information. You know better than I do."
That's funny. Significant understanding of tax and how it all works in Louisiana. Engineered by trade, lawyer. How did you learn so much about tax?
I say I'm more of like an amateur economist. I've always been very interested in tax policy. But I think the very first time I spoke to the department, after the governor said, pointed me, I went out and said, I was like, listen, I'll be honest with you. I really don't know that much about the tax code. Like I know policy stuff and kind of the implications of, how this is working, what's competitive. So I don't know that much about, the actual tax code. That's the reality. And I was like, but I told him I catch on quick.
Yeah.
And so, at the end of the day, I've just had a lot of people around me in the department that have, taught me a lot of stuff. I do a lot of the litigation, a lot of day to day with the litigation department. And so I see all the controversies that come up.
Yep.
And then, a lot of it I trust the people who know more than I do, frankly, but I do see a lot of the problems. And so that kind of gives you a pretty good grasp on it. And I wasn't completely ignorant of it when I walked into it. I've tried to rewrite a few of the things already.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it is. It's complicated, and there's still a lot of stuff I don't know, and I'll learn something new every day. But
It's in there. We do the easy math. The engineers do the hard math, right? So you crossed over to the easy side of the math.
yeah,
part.
dollars are easier than calculus.
And I think I remembered you
equations.
saying you tallied income tax.
I
in law
did
school.
Cali income tax and law, federal income tax. in
Federal
law
income
school.
tax. So for the non-lawyers of the world, that would be the top score in the
Yeah,
in the class.
I told my dad that. I thought my dad was an IRS agent, so
That's
I thought he'd be
right.
proud of me, right? And I was like, I thought my dad would be proud that I Cali
Son.
income tax. You know what he told me? He said, well, that's great. He's like, so if the IRS ever investigates you, you can't use ignorance as a defense because we're going to pull up your transcript from law school and say, hey, you got a
That's
4.0 in income
Doesn't
tax.
count.
Don't tell me you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's funny. That's
So what
hilarious.
was it like growing up with a dad as an IRS agent?
So I didn't even I just used to say my dad worked for the government. I didn't even know what he did
What it is,
until
right?
like probably in high school. In high school, I think, so my dad was actually, he was head of the IRS in Louisiana, Mississippi when David Duke got arrested and, sent
All
to
the
jail for
things.
tax evasion.
Yeah.
So that was
What
like,
year?
that was like his, kind of claim to fame was
Yeah.
that, he was there when that happened. And so I think that was kind of the first time that I was like, oh, like, you're doing something that
Something
people
important.
care about?
maybe some people do or don't like this, So, but yeah, no, it's interesting. My dad's a very, I don't know what do you say, stoic and cynical person. So he's, I think that comes from being like an IRS
Right.
criminal agent for 35 years or whatever.
For sure.
But yeah, no, he always tells me, he's like, oh yeah, he's going to write a biography and he's going to call it Why Pay My 35 Years in the IRS or something like that.
It's hilarious. Hey, here's more numbers telling stories.
go.
We're gonna go.
I'm ready.
We'll go off script.
That's
a little
right.
bit.
Go
We don't
ahead.
even have a script.
That's
Doesn't
right.
matter. Something you said really caught my attention. Numbers, pandemic, legislation, government. Something with a whole lot of commas in it, trillions of dollars, and we were talking about the nuclear, George W. Grid, and how we could have taken the same amount of money and provided electricity to the entire United States.
Oh
for
yeah.
free. Run us through that again, because that was fascinating.
This was just kind of my back of the napkin
Just see
math.
how your
Like,
brain works.
I think we spent about, something like $6 trillion or something on a COVID response, right? Of whatever it is, PPP loans, all this other junk that I think most people can agree probably just went up in smoke. Generally went to people buying stuff on Amazon and like subscribing to Netflix or
There was a
whatever
lot
for,
of that, yeah.
So a lot of it, there's no long-term tangible benefit. And then I put that in perspective. I think for like, if something like 2.2 trillion or something like that, you could have built 200 nuclear power plants across the country and given everybody free, carbon-free power for the rest of their lives, essentially, with just, kind of the marginal cost of operation, which is pretty minimal. So, I mean, you kind of put that in perspective of like, what benefit would it be for you to just have like a $10 a month electric bill versus, we dumped all this money in COVID, which really didn't achieve anything except, I think, got some pretty record inflation. Other than that, it didn't really do that much. So, yeah, that was just trying to look at something. I always try to look at stuff of, what is the long-term benefit? That's what I think from a policy perspective, it's not, what is it going to do this year? Like, yeah, you don't want to bankrupt it this year, but what is the long-term benefit from all these things? How are you going to make these investments so that 100 years from now or 10 years from now, 15 years from now, things are going to be better? And, I think that's why I look at all the dollars, all the taxpayer dollars that you're going to take, you want to get the best return on investment for them. And I mean, sometimes those return on investments don't come until further down the road. Like I spent a lot of time in the legislature advocating for elementary literacy, right? And like, third and fourth grade literacy for the younger kids. Well, you don't see money from that. Like there's no dollars that you get from that. But guess what? Like, you can actually track, how many prison beds you need by what's the third grade reading level. Because guess what? If the kids can't read, they're going to end up in jail. And I mean, that's been the sad story in Louisiana for a very long time. And so, sometimes you just have to play the long game. And, I like to look at the ROI. I mean, I say that in the committees all the time, how much money are we making from this? Because everybody's got a great idea about how we need some new credit or some new everything. And you say, look, we've had a lot of these ideas and we've done the ROI analysis, and very, very few of them ever come back positive. So.
Yeah, the money could be used alternate ways, right? It's a decision. I mean, it's just interesting to hear that big take on, wow, this money could have been used for this other very specific use.
Very purpose.
And it gives it a really unique perspective for sure. So
speaking of literacy. Yeah, the Society of Louisiana CPAs does make a big push on financial literacy. And I know your sons are in Cub Scouts, right? Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that the society was trying to advocate for was a badge for financial literacy for Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts. Were you an Eagle Scout?
I was an Eagle Scout.
So so what do you think about that? I mean...
so there is I don't remember.
I think there is a
financial management
we actually
or something
wanted to do
like
an
that.
accounting badge.
Accounting.
Badge. Yeah.
Then you have a balance sheet. You got to
That's right.
Thing. Yeah.
Cash flow. Manage the cash flow.
Beyond literacy, like super literacy, right? So interesting. We've got a significant number of Eagle Scouts in our membership, and even the past couple of years ago, chair of the AICPA was an Eagle Scout. And so having that conversation, Brian Eric, our immediate past chair, is an Eagle Scout. He runs scout troops out of Hammond, Louisiana. Both his boys are in it, et cetera. And we started talking about this badge. Kurt Ostricker from Alexandria. I don't know if you know Mr. O, Emil Ostricker. I think it's Troop 6. Is it Troops that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's Troop 6 out of Alexandria. Phenomenal. They have like 100 kids in this thing, plus, and a little bit of Alexandria. And if you're a young man and you live in the area, Mr. O. He passed last year, and so all this is bubbling up. And here we are talking about Eagle Scouts again. Just wondering what your perspective would be on a accounting badge. We're trying to figure out how to champion that.
I don't know how you get a new merit badge. I mean, I guess you probably can. But I don't know. I think it's a good idea. I mean, I think at the end of the day, I mean, honestly, just the financial literacy piece, it's the most important math. I'll be honest with you. I very rarely use calculus in my everyday life, but interest rates matter a lot, and I mean, matter a lot to everybody.
Yeah.
And so, I think that the extent that people understand that and understand, cash flow and honestly their own personal finances, that impacts literally everybody. Yeah. So
were you in the legislature when they passed the financial literacy requirement?
Nikki Muscarello, Nikki Muscarello.
Yeah, for sure. So we've been working on that for a decade.
Right.
And now that it's crossed the finish line, we're actively working to try to help that happen in the high schools. And so I did a little pilot program with Covington High through the Ag Center at LSU and their 4-H program. We're working with Junior Achievement that has a whole curriculum for the year. We're trying to plug in CPAs to help teach a little bit if we need to, or certainly talk about careers in accounting. And so it's a huge, important thing as we talk about Louisiana improving and being better and being educated. Financial literacy is a huge part of that. So I'm so thankful that it finally got across the finish line. And I think it was incoming freshmen high school in the fall of 24 are required to have the year by the time they graduate. So it's active now, and we're trying to figure out the best way to help.
Yeah, no, it's funny. There's a whole lot of, I think, research on kind of how the high school structure system, how the high school class structure is set up, and like it's basically set up in like the 50s to like beat the Russians to the moon. It's basically, like every kid's got to take trigonometry, like every kid's got to take pre-calculus and all this stuff. Practically, not every kid is going to be an engineer. So like the justification for taking, even Algebra 2 or some of these really advanced math classes, like you're never going to use that in life. Like it's a great mental exercise to know. Like if you're going to be an engineer, mathematician, like maybe some computer science, like maybe you need that. But most, 98% of the population doesn't. But they really do need to know how interest rates work and financial markets and bank accounts and stuff. And so, I mean, I just think this is one of the most common sense things that needs to happen. Just kind of this practical math, like even like. How do you measure something and cut it? Most people are going to have to do that more often than they're going to have to do,
exactly
some kind of differential equation.
Or how much money do I have in a bank account, right? Just because I have checks doesn't mean I have money.
Yeah, that's right. No, credit cards, it's free money, right?
I said that wrong. What's a check? I mean, nobody even knows how to write a check anymore.
Yeah.
It's a very different world. Forgot to mention our sponsor,
Oh, yeah.
General Ledger's tax season.
Awesome. Thank you, General.
Some of that. I know.
I've used it.
I've seen
actually.
a picture of its use in your home, and we appreciate
Heard
that.
your wife was cooking with it, right?
She did. I think it was salmon or something she seasoned with it.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's
got a kick.
It's been a lot of fun. It retails for $10.40. The Form 1040. Ha. Actually, it's $11.20 for a single. That's the corporate form.
Oh,
Yeah.
By a case, the case price is $10.40. So
Okay.
it's been a lot of fun.
So speaking of measuring, I hear you're doing some renovation to your home. So all those engineering skills are coming in handy?
So actually we're in the process of selling the house. And so I've had to do about 8 years worth of delayed renovations to fix everything up. And so it's been an exciting couple months while I've gone. First, it was to get the house listed. I had to go back and fix all these things that were broken or whatever. And then after the inspection came back, then I had to go through and do all the other things that were not as apparent as the ones that I fixed the first time. So I'm kind of a crack handyman.
I heard you're Mr. Fix-It.
No, my dad did not fish, did not hunt, did not play golf. All he did was fix things, and so that's all I do too.
Well, that's good.
So
That's good.
yeah.
So where are you moving?
We're moving to Baton Rouge. We've had I've been, I guess, driving back and forth from Mandeville for like 6 years now, and it's about an hour and a half on a good day, right?
Yeah, all right, it is. I make the trips hour and a half.
Both ways, yeah. And then
a very frustrating hour and a half.
Oh yeah, no, you get to like Denham Springs and you start to hate your life, and I'm usually on the phone, but then it just kind of tires you out.
Right.
So anyway, I think it's better.
I think we get some sort of award because I know when I went to LSU in the early 80s, they were working on I-10, and they've not stopped working on I-10. And they're currently working on I-10. And I that's 40 years of history of just working on I-10. We should have an award for the most continuous project ever. I don't know.
Well, one day it's going to be fixed, and they're not going to have any problems. And
For sure.
I don't know.
So, along the lines of, this year, all of our chairs have a theme. So when they come in, we talk to them about, what they want to accomplish for the year and a little bit about them. Ann does a great job of interviewing them and putting it in Lanyap. And our current chair, Bridget Kegler, very boisterous, big social internet presence, had a significant impact on the profession and is being followed by young CPAs and students all over the world, really. And she's going to be our next guest on our podcast. So I'm kind of teeing that up a little bit. But her theme this year is what's your and? So, we know you're engineer and attorney by trade. You're currently the Secretary of the Department of Revenue. What's your and? What's the thing that Richard Nelson does outside of work? What's your jam? What's your passion? What motivates you?
What motivates me, or I spend a lot of time just honestly reading like policy, trying to figure out what's the best way to do things. I guess I've spent 7 years in the federal government, and then the last couple of years in the state government trying to make it better. So it's just it's always really interesting to me to look around the world and just see, because most governments, people all deal with some version of the same problem, and it's interesting to me to see how everybody fixes it. So I've read The Economist since I was probably like 19. I went to a thing at LSU, and the guy said, if you want to learn everything about the world, read The Economist cover to cover. And so when I was 19, I started reading The Economist cover to cover, and I like understood probably 10% of what was in there. And I feel like that was one of the things that's taught me the most in the world of everything that I've done, is that, just reading through it, and you see how, basically different countries deal with the same problems. And even in the United States, I think it gives a pretty good perspective. But I like to keep abreast of all that kind of stuff and just kind of see and, apply it to the extent that I can here. I mean, like, honestly, like I said, I didn't come up with a lot of these ideas. These things have been recommended forever. But you can also see, hey, look, Texas does this, Florida does this. It works with so much better. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can just kind of take good ideas from other people, and that's a lot easier way to get ahead. But it's not a very exciting thing. I wish I was probably more of a hunter or more of a golfer or something. I live on a golf course, never golfed in my life. But my dad, like I said, he liked to fix things, and I feel like that's all I got. Either try and fix policy problems, or I try and fix home repairs. So one day I'll be able to relax.
Yeah. I mean, it seems that sort of ties into your. I know when the article you talked about travel with your family too internationally.
Yes.
So all that reading and background, you get to go see it firsthand, right?
Well, that was part of my deal with my wife when we left the State Department. So we lived overseas and stuff for a while, and went around a lot. I told her, well, we can go back to Louisiana, and we can still go on vacation, in Europe or wherever else you want to go. And that was just kind of part of the way we worked out, we're going to come back and still kind of go in 2 weeks or so a year and go on adventures. I mean, practically, I know y'all are accountants, like do the math at how long it takes to do a week at Disney World and how long it does to do a week in, Italy or anywhere else. It's a lot cheaper. I mean,
sure.
Practically,
it is.
Even with depending on where the exchange rates are, but I mean, just getting to Europe, the ticket is a little bit more expensive, but once you're there, it's significantly more affordable, I feel like.
Unless you go to Epcot.
And it's a great experience.
Are there.
Yeah, all the countries are there, yeah.
So what's your favorite place that your family's been?
So a few years ago, we went to Slovenia. Slovenia is probably one of the coolest places. It's like if Disney World was a country, I would say Slovenia is that. It's just like this beautiful country with it's got mountains and these like crystal clear blue lakes and like castles on top of the lakes. Like it just doesn't even really look like a real place. That's pretty cool. We went to Croatia on that same trip because it's kind of right next to each other. Croatia is really nice too. I don't know. I can tell you. When I was in Europe, or when I lived in Germany, I spent a lot of time in the Baltic countries. So like Lithuania and Estonia are both really cool. Finland, I highly recommend if you're like, hey, I want to go to Europe. I want to go someplace that not everyone in the world goes. Those are pretty cool. But Slovenia is cool. Was one of the nicest places with my family and the trips that we went on. I highly recommend that. Yeah, I can give you all kinds of travel tips. I've been to a lot of the crappy countries too, so I can tell you where not to go.
Awesome. And any other questions?
Yeah, well, you just mentioned again family, and as Ron said, what's your and? A part of that and is dad. So you're a dad of 3 boys.
That's the most difficult. Yeah, that's the most difficult. They listen to me less than the legislature, if you can imagine that.
So hey, of your 3 boys, which do you think are most likely to become a politician?
Oh, a politician. So my oldest got an award I think when he was in like first grade, and they said that he's the salesman award because he's always trying to pitch people on things.
I think I got that award.
Oh yeah. So he's probably the best, and I think is trying to always navigate about, hey, look, you want this, like Dad. I think this would make a
good
great
negotiator,
idea.
like bedtime and whether I'm going to eat my vegetables.
Yeah, I tell them all, just go get rich. That's probably better.
Yeah,
Don't try and solve the world's problems. Go solve just your problems, and it's a better path. I think I read, as I read my sons these books, and I think one of them was, I don't remember if it was John Adams. It's kind of like a compilation of founding fathers, like letters they wrote to their kids. And I think it might have been John Adams wrote a letter to his son, and he said, don't ever go into politics. Go get, just stay professional world. And it's like, but if you do, like, basically do it for the right reasons. And so I would tell my kids the same thing, don't ever get into politics, go make money, be happy and successful. And if you do it for the right reasons though. So.
Okay. So awesome. Any in engineering or to be in a lawyer of the other 2?
The other 2. So all of my kids are very, very good at math. And so they're not.
Wow.
That's
There it
good.
They're not the
Maybe
best.
a CPA?
Yeah, they're not the best writers, but they're
Promoted,
pretty good at
man. We
math.
need another CPA.
That's it.
So usually if they want something, I'll make them do like a series of mental math problem, like
Yeah.
whatever, 115 times 37. And if they, I only give them whatever they want if they can get a couple of them right in the row. So that's kind of the wall that we build in our house to, instead of doing chores, you have to do mental math. So hopefully it works out.
Financial
They're not
literacy at its best, right?
They're not going to be, we're not going to be, I'm not really athletic. My wife wasn't really athletic. So I tell them they're going to be mathletes. So
Mathletes.
that's
There
what we
go.
got.
There we go. But you also mentioned that they're in Cub Scouts, so they're following in your footsteps, hopefully, of becoming Eagle Scouts down the road.
Yeah, I hope so. They have more, more support from me than I have. My parents were just kind of like, all right, get your tent and go in the woods. Like, I'm not dealing with this. So I at least try to be like, all right, let's go, kids. Let's get, and I think they have fun.
And a big
It
trip
is.
this weekend.
Oh yes, we're going to go sleep on the Battleship Alabama. That's pretty good.
That's phenomenal.
I like that's a walk through history. I mean, honestly, spending the night on it is really good because you have a lot of time to kind of walk through. I mean, if you just go there for an hour or two, you can't walk through all 8 levels of the ship. That's like pretty extensive, but it's a fun place. The kids really like it.
Yeah, the fact that thing even floats, right, as massive as it is a marvel right there.
When you walk through that place and you're like, these guys built this thing without a single computer, like without anything. They just
AutoCAD.
drew it all. Yeah. And there's like wires and guns and all this other stuff that they all got. Somebody figured out how to make all this stuff work.
Phenomenal.
And put it all together. And they built it in like a couple months. And you're like,
Amazing.
I don't know that you could ever, and like now you build a ship and it takes like 20 years or something like
Yeah.
that, right? Like
Yeah.
the guy's father has to be the guy that finishes it because it takes so long.
For sure.
Yeah, and there was one other thing that I learned from our interview was your favorite quote was from Yoda, which is also one of Ron's favorite quotes, hanging on the wall in his office. So share that.
Is do or do not, there is no try.
There
That's
you go.
right.
Yeah,
Master Jedi Yoda.
that's right. No, I do tell my kids that a lot and my staff.
Same.
They're
with
like,
the
we're going to
staff.
try to get it done.
No, we're not.
We're like,
We're gonna
okay.
do. That's
Yeah.
right.
So, I mean,
Great quote.
I think, he lived to be 900. So, I mean, obviously he was doing something right.
That's right. That's right.
Probably a Mr. Fix-It himself.
For sure. Well, thank you for
Yes,
being with
this
us
has been
today.
fun.
We
No
very
worries.
much
Thanks for having
appreciate it. And y'all look for us out there again on our next issue, our next episode of CPAs and Beignets, where numbers tell stories.
We need to bite in the
Oh.
beignets, right?
Forgot about the important part. We got to
right.
dig
Oh,
in.
we have to
We
try
got
the
to get
beignets.
messy.
Yes, go ahead, grab one and lightly
Let me
dust
ease
it.
around the microphone.
It's good to be on there, and we're gonna cheers to
Cheers.
a good episode.
We're going to have to mop up in here.